She tossed the money across the polished oak table like I was some beggar. 2 crumpled $100 bills slid toward me, stopping just shy of my hand. Melissa leaned back in her chair, her lipstick too red, her smirk too cruel, and sneered, "Book yourself a cab to your parents' place. Goodbye." That was my wife. The woman I once promised forever to. Now she was treating me like a piece of trash she'd finally taken out. I glanced at my lawyer, Jason, a guy I had known since college. Instead of looking angry for me, he burst out laughing. And not a polite laugh, an uncontrollable, loud, belly laugh that echoed through the whole damn room. Melissa's smile cracked for the first time. She didn't understand. Not yet. Because the truth she thought she owned, the fortune she thought she stole, wasn't hers. She thought she'd upgraded to my brother Ethan, the so-called CEO of a billion-dollar furniture empire. She thought she'd bled me dry, humiliated me, replaced me with someone better. She thought she had it all figured out. But she didn't know the real CEO was sitting right across from her. Me. And the best part? Watching her smug little victory speech dissolve into confusion, then into panic, when she realized she had played the wrong man all along. But let me not jump too far. If you want to understand how we ended up in that room, with my wife throwing cash at me like I was some cab driver she dismissed, you need to hear how it all unraveled. Because this wasn't just about betrayal. This was about lies layered so deep, even I almost believed them. It started long before that settlement. Melissa had always been intense. Beautiful, yes. Smart, yes. But underneath, she was venom disguised in silk. When she wanted something, she didn't ask. She took. And for years, I thought that drive was a good thing. I thought it meant she cared about building a future with me. What a joke. I began noticing the cracks 6 months before the divorce papers hit my doorstep. She grew colder at home, short answers, eyes always on her phone, late nights out with excuses so thin I could see right through them. Girls' night, she'd say, but come back smelling like whiskey and cologne that wasn't mine. Spa day, she'd explain, but her credit card bill showed charges at restaurants and hotels. Still, I played dumb. Why? Because I loved her. Or maybe because I was scared of what I'd find if I dug too deep. The moment everything snapped into place, though, was brutal. It was a Friday night. I came home late from the office, tie still around my neck, stomach growling. The house smelled of vanilla candles, Melissa's go-to trick whenever she wanted to stage some fake version of romance. But she wasn't waiting for me. She was on the patio, with Ethan. My brother. The golden boy. The one my parents always praised, the one who supposedly built an empire from scratch. And there he was, hands all over my wife, whispering in her ear while she laughed that fake high-pitched laugh she used when she was already caught up in someone's orbit. I didn't go outside. Didn't scream. I just stood there in the shadows, holding a glass she had left behind with her lipstick stain smeared on the rim. And as I watched them, something inside me broke, not just my marriage, not just my trust, but something primal. You want to know what betrayal feels like? It's not just pain. It's not just anger. It's humiliation, raw and acidic, eating at your stomach. It's realizing the people you trusted most, the person you share a bed with and the brother you grew up with, have been conspiring behind your back. That night, I didn't sleep. I left, stayed in a motel off the interstate, and replayed everything in my head. Every lie. Every fake smile. Every cold shoulder in bed. It wasn't just an affair. It was a war she had been waging against me, and I was the last one to know. But here's the twist, Melissa thought she'd won. She thought leaving me for Ethan meant she'd secured the crown. She thought she was cashing in her loyalty points for a lifetime upgrade. That's why, at the settlement, she had the audacity to sneer and throw a couple $100 at me. She thought Ethan was the key to the empire. She thought I was broke. She thought I was nothing without her. And in that exact moment, watching my lawyer laugh, watching her smugness start to crack, I realized this story wasn't about her betrayal anymore. It was about my revenge. And trust me, it was just getting started. She didn't know I had seen it all that night on the patio. She didn't know I stood there, watching her run her hands over Ethan like she belonged to him. To her, I was still the clueless husband who worked late and trusted her blindly. That's what made her confident, that smug arrogance she carried into every room as if the world existed to serve her games. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She poured me coffee, kissed me on the cheek, asked about my schedule. It was almost laughable. I studied her every move, every glance at her phone, every fake smile. I wasn't looking at my wife anymore, I was staring at a stranger wearing her skin. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The diamond bracelet she wore to dinner with friends, Ethan's taste, not mine. The sudden business meetings she claimed to have, even though she hadn't worked a real job in years. The whispering phone calls on the balcony, the way she'd lower her voice but let just enough of her laughter leak through to stab me in the chest. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. And yet, when I finally asked her about her late nights, she turned it around on me. "You're paranoid, Daniel. You've been working too much, maybe you need rest." She looked me dead in the eye, all calm, all fake tenderness, and made me question my own sanity. That's the kind of woman Melissa was, a liar so skilled she could stab you and then make you apologize for bleeding. I knew I had to stop playing dumb. So I started digging. Phone records. Bank statements. I wasn't sloppy about it, I knew Melissa would catch me if I wasn't careful. But I didn't need much. A few nights later, the truth hit me harder than anything. A hotel receipt. 2 nights. A suite booked under Ethan's corporate card, but signed in Melissa's handwriting. That was the nail in the coffin. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at that receipt, my chest burning. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was proof. Proof that my wife wasn't just unfaithful, she was invested. And proof that my brother, the man who toasted me at my wedding, was the one sharing my wife's bed behind closed doors. When I confronted her, she didn't even flinch. I still remember the way she leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded, that same smug grin plastered on her face. "So what if I did?" "You're boring, Daniel. You live like a middle-class drone while Ethan actually knows how to take care of me. You should thank me for not telling you sooner, you wouldn't have been able to handle it." Those words cut deeper than the affair itself. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was proud. She wanted to humiliate me, to make me feel small, to remind me that she thought she had traded up. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just looked at her and let her dig her own grave with every word. Because here's the thing about Melissa, her arrogance made her blind. She thought she held all the cards, but she didn't even know what game we were playing. That night, after she stormed out with her suitcase, probably heading straight to Ethan's place, I sat alone in the living room with a glass of whiskey. My whole life had just detonated, and yet, beneath the rage and heartbreak, something new stirred inside me. A strange calm. She thought she'd destroyed me. She thought she'd stripped me of dignity, of money, of power. She thought she'd humiliated me into crawling back to nothing. But she didn't know the truth. She didn't know the empire she worshipped wasn't Ethan's. She didn't know whose signature really sat at the bottom of every contract. She thought she was playing chess. She hadn't even realized she was a pawn. And as I finished that drink, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for scraps. I was going to burn down her illusion, piece by piece, until she realized she had bet everything on the wrong man. That was the moment my grief ended, and my revenge began. The weeks that followed were like living in a play where everyone else knew their lines except me. Melissa flaunted her new life with Ethan like it was some kind of prize. I'd see the posts on social media, her sipping champagne in his penthouse, her wrapped around his arm at charity galas, her smug little captions about finally being valued. She didn't block me, didn't hide it. No, she wanted me to see. She wanted me to feel the knife twisting deeper every single day. Friends tried to avoid the subject, but pity leaked through their voices. My mother called, speaking in soft tones, telling me that Ethan and Melissa seemed serious. My father didn't say much at all, just sighed heavily when we spoke, as if he carried the shame for all of us. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation on a stage big enough for the whole damn world to see. Melissa made sure I heard from her too. Late-night messages dripping with venom, "You should move on, Daniel. Stop embarrassing yourself. Ethan can give me things you never could." Sometimes she'd even call, not to talk, but to let me hear her laughing in the background with him. That's the kind of cruelty she thrived on. She wasn't satisfied with leaving me, she needed to crush me under her heel. I didn't respond. Not once. Every text, every call, every post, I let them pile up like trash on a curb. Because I knew something she didn't. And the longer I stayed silent, the deeper she sunk into her delusion that she had finally won. When the divorce process started, she strutted into every meeting like a queen ready to strip her servant of his last coin. She demanded the house, the car, half of the savings. She even wanted spousal support, claiming she'd sacrificed her career for me. Jason, my lawyer, leaned back in his chair during those meetings, barely hiding his smirk. He knew what was coming. I just had to let Melissa dig the hole deeper. One afternoon, she walked into mediation wearing a dress that probably cost more than my first car, clutching Ethan's hand like a trophy. She didn't even look at me when she spoke, only at Jason, as if I were beneath her notice. "We'll take the settlement in cash," she said, like it was already decided. Ethan just sat there, smug as ever, nodding along, convinced his empire would cover any demand she threw out. It was almost entertaining, watching her confidence grow. Almost. Because while she thought she was climbing to the top, she was actually walking into a trap she didn't even know existed. The night before the final settlement, she called me herself. Her voice was sharp, mocking. "Tomorrow, it's over. Don't embarrass yourself trying to fight this. You'll walk away with nothing, Daniel. You'll crawl back to your parents like the pathetic man you've always been. Meanwhile, I'll be Mrs. CEO. So be smart, don't make a scene." I remember staring at my phone after she hung up, the anger boiling so hot I thought the glass would shatter in my hand. But beneath that fury, I smiled. Because tomorrow, she'd learn the truth. The next day, the room was tense before anyone even spoke. Melissa walked in like a movie star, Ethan at her side, her perfume filling the air like poison. She dropped her designer bag on the table, slid into the chair across from me, and crossed her legs with deliberate arrogance. Jason glanced at me, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. She didn't waste time. She leaned forward, pulled 2 bills from her bag, and tossed them across the table. "Here. $200. Book yourself a cab to your parents' place. Goodbye, Daniel." Her voice dripped with contempt, her smile wide as she leaned back like she'd just delivered the killing blow. Jason's laughter exploded, loud and uncontrollable, bouncing off the walls of the sterile room. Melissa's face faltered, her smirk twitching into confusion. She looked from him to me, demanding answers. "What the hell is so funny?" That was the first time I spoke in weeks. My voice was calm, steady. "You really think Ethan is the CEO of that empire you've been parading around in?" Her eyes narrowed, but before she could fire back, Jason slid a folder across the table, opening it to reveal the documents, the contracts, the incorporation papers, the signatures. My signatures. Ethan had always been the front, the spokesperson, the golden boy with a perfect smile. But the real power? The real CEO? That had been me all along. Melissa's face drained of color. She looked at Ethan, who suddenly wouldn't meet her eyes. Her lips parted, searching for words, but none came. For the first time since this nightmare began, she was speechless. And in that silence, I felt the weight of her betrayal lift, not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because I had finally taken back control. She thought she'd destroyed me. She thought she'd stolen everything. But she had been sleeping with a man who wasn't half as powerful as she believed. And now, it was my turn to watch her world collapse. Melissa's shock lasted only a moment before the venom came back into her eyes. She wasn't the type to admit defeat, not even when the evidence was sitting right in front of her. She pushed the folder away, her nails tapping against the table, and let out a laugh that was more like a snarl. So what? You think this changes anything? You're still pathetic, Daniel. You always will be. Paperwork doesn't make you a man. Ethan does things you never could. I didn't answer. Jason leaned forward, smirking like he was watching a stage play unfold exactly as scripted. Ethan, though, he looked like a kid caught stealing from a candy store. His shoulders slumped, his eyes darted everywhere but mine. For once, the golden boy didn't have a speech ready. Melissa grabbed his hand and tried to salvage her performance. Come on, Ethan. We don't need this loser's charity. We've built something real. He can keep his stupid company. But Ethan didn't move. He sat frozen, and when he finally did glance at me, his face was pale. I could almost see the gears turning in his head, the realization that his lavish lifestyle, his penthouse, his endless supply of luxury, all of it had come from me. He wasn't the king. He was a figurehead. And without me, he was nothing. Melissa noticed his hesitation and her mask cracked. Her grip on his hand tightened, her smile faltered. Ethan, she hissed under her breath, say something. He didn't. That silence was better than any speech. For once, she was alone in her arrogance. Jason closed the folder with a sharp snap. Well, he said, still chuckling, that about settles it. My client retains full control of all assets. Melissa, you leave with whatever's legally yours, which, he flipped another paper, isn't much more than the clothes on your back. And Ethan, he turned his gaze on my brother. You might want to start polishing your resume. Melissa's chair scraped violently as she stood, her face twisted into fury. This isn't over, Daniel. You think you've humiliated me? You think you've won? Watch me. I'll burn this down. I'll ruin you. I stood too, finally letting my rage seep into my voice. You already tried, Melissa. You used me, lied to me, dragged me through the mud in front of everyone. You betrayed me with my own brother. And for what? For money that was already mine? For a man who couldn't tie his own shoes without me pulling the strings? You wanted to play games. You just lost. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, Melissa had nothing to say. She grabbed her bag, muttered curses under her breath, and stormed out, leaving Ethan sitting there like a man whose entire identity had just crumbled. When the door slammed, Jason finally stopped laughing long enough to clap me on the shoulder. Told you, he said. All you had to do was let her bury herself. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Because as much as Melissa deserved every ounce of humiliation she was choking on, the betrayal still pulsed inside me. I looked at Ethan, my own brother, sitting there like a shell of himself, and I felt the weight of it all. Family wasn't supposed to do this. Brothers weren't supposed to betray brothers. He finally lifted his head, his voice small, almost pathetic. Daniel. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I laughed, bitter and sharp. You didn't mean for it to go this far. You were in my house, Ethan. With my wife. Don't act like this just happened. You chose her. You chose the knife over blood. He tried to protest, but the words died in his throat. He knew there was no excuse, no apology that could erase what he'd done. The silence between us stretched like a canyon, one that couldn't be crossed. When I walked out of that room, I felt like I had been reborn through fire. Melissa thought she had destroyed me, but all she'd done was strip away the illusions. I wasn't weak. I wasn't lost. And I wasn't alone in my pain. There were people watching, people who had seen her arrogance, people who had witnessed the truth. But none of that erased the ache in my chest. Nights were still long, my bed still cold. I still woke up with her voice echoing in my head, still replayed the sight of Ethan's hands on her waist. Betrayal doesn't leave clean scars, it leaves jagged edges that cut you over and over when you least expect it. Yet in that pain, something else grew. Resolve. I knew Melissa wouldn't disappear quietly. She was too vindictive for that. She'd try to claw her way back, to twist the narrative, to make herself the victim. But now, I was ready. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about making sure she never had the chance to bury me again. And deep down, I knew the storm was only beginning. Melissa didn't vanish after that settlement, she lingered like poison in the air, refusing to dissolve. Within days, rumors started spreading, whispers that I had tricked her, that I had used money to trap her in a loveless marriage, that Ethan was the one she truly loved. She spun herself into a victim, and plenty of shallow ears were willing to listen. That was her talent, lying so smoothly that half the world felt sorry for her. But she underestimated me. She thought I'd retreat, hide, lick my wounds in silence. She didn't expect me to step forward with the truth, to start speaking openly about what had happened. I didn't have to exaggerate, didn't have to twist it, the receipts, the witnesses, the facts were damning enough. And people began to see through her act. Slowly, her shiny mask started to crack. Ethan, meanwhile, collapsed under the weight of it all. Without my company backing him, his lifestyle evaporated. The penthouse went first. The cars followed. Creditors circled like vultures, and suddenly the golden boy had nothing golden left. I should have felt satisfaction, but what I felt was complicated. He was my brother. Blood. And yet every time I remembered him on my patio with Melissa's arms around him, that bond dissolved into ash. One night, he showed up at my door, unshaven, eyes hollow. He tried to speak, but the words came out broken. I made a mistake, Daniel. She used me. She never cared about me. His voice cracked. I wanted to be you. And she made me believe I was. Hearing that twisted something inside me. Pity, rage, grief, all colliding at once. I wanted to slam the door in his face, but I couldn't. Not yet. So I let him stand there, let him spill his pathetic confessions on my doorstep while I stared at him in silence. Finally, I said, wanting to be me doesn't excuse stabbing me in the back. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed yourself. Then I closed the door, leaving him outside in the dark. Melissa's descent was uglier. She kept pushing, kept clawing for control. When public sympathy started slipping, she tried to spin it harder. She told anyone who would listen that I had manipulated the documents, that I was gaslighting her. At one point, she even tried to sue me for fraudulent concealment, claiming she'd been tricked into marrying a man she didn't truly understand. The case was thrown out in minutes, but she showed up at the courthouse in designer sunglasses, acting like she was still the star of the show. The truth was, she was unraveling. Friends she used to flaunt stopped answering her calls. The parties dried up. Even Ethan pulled away, too ashamed to stand beside her anymore. She had burned every bridge, but still strutted like she owned the road. That was Melissa, Too arrogant to accept defeat, too blinded by her own lies to see the cliff she was walking off. For me, the nights were still hard. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, flashes of her laughter cutting into my mind like blades. I'd replay the patio scene, the settlement, the venom in her voice. Rage and sorrow danced circles around me, and sometimes I thought they'd choke me. But then I'd remember her face in that room when Jason revealed the truth, the shock, the fear, the helplessness. That memory kept me going. It reminded me that for once, she couldn't talk her way out of the corner she painted herself into. One evening, I went back to that same patio where it all began. The whiskey glass was still in the cupboard, still stained faintly with her lipstick. I held it in my hand, staring at it under the porch light, and realized something. This wasn't just the story of betrayal. This was the story of liberation. Melissa had thought she destroyed me, but all she'd done was free me from the web of lies I had been living in for years. The man who once ignored the signs, who once believed every excuse, who once loved blindly, he was gone. In his place stood someone harder, sharper, someone who finally understood that loyalty without respect is just a leash around your neck. Melissa thought she stole everything. But what she really did was hand me the truth. And with that truth, I was never going to be weak again. Still, a part of me knew she wasn't finished. Women like Melissa don't disappear quietly. They linger, they scheme, they look for cracks to crawl back through. And the thought of her returning, of her trying one last desperate play, it didn't scare me anymore. It thrilled me. Because now, I was ready for her. Melissa's final plays came fast and reckless, like a cornered animal biting at anything in reach. First came the calls, long, rambling voicemails where her tone flipped from seductive to furious to tearful, sometimes all in the span of a minute. "You'll regret this, Daniel," she hissed in one. In another, her voice was honey-sweet, "We can fix this. You know I never really loved Ethan." And in the next, she was screaming, "You ruined me. You ruined everything." I stopped listening after the first few, but I saved them. Evidence. Proof of who she really was when the mask slipped. Then came the appearances. She'd show up outside my office, lurking in her luxury car she could barely afford anymore, sunglasses hiding her puffy eyes. Once, she stormed into the lobby and started screaming at the receptionist that I owed her, that I was a liar, that she deserved half my empire. Security dragged her out while she cursed me loud enough for half the city to hear. My employees saw it all. The illusion of Melissa, the glamorous, untouchable woman, was dead. All that was left was desperation. Ethan wasn't doing much better. Word spread quickly that he wasn't the mastermind behind the empire, just the puppet. Investors who once toasted him stopped answering his calls. Former friends disappeared. The man who once walked into rooms with his head high now shuffled down sidewalks with his shoulders hunched, a ghost of the golden boy he used to be. One night, he showed up again. This time, he was drunk. He pounded on my door until I opened it, his face red and wet with tears. "She left me, Daniel," he slurred, collapsing against the frame. "She said I'm nothing without her. Nothing without you." He laughed bitterly, a sound more broken than amused. "She took what little I had left and vanished." I looked at him, my own brother, destroyed by the very woman he thought would make him whole. For a second, I almost pitied him. But then I remembered the patio. Her laugh. His hands on her waist. And that pity turned to ice. "You made your choice," I said quietly. "And now you get to live with it." I shut the door while he slid down against it, his sobs muffled by the wood between us. Melissa wasn't gone, though. A week later, I received a letter. Handwritten. That surprised me. Melissa was never the sentimental type. Her words were messy, desperate scratches across the page. She blamed me for everything, claimed I had ruined her chance at happiness, begged for one more meeting. She wrote about how we still had history, how she could make it up to me if I'd just give her another chance. I burned it without finishing the second page. The truth was, I was tired. Tired of her lies, tired of the poison she carried, tired of letting her name live rent-free in my head. She wasn't just my ex-wife anymore. She was a lesson carved into me, a scar I'd carry but never again allow to control me. One evening, I drove out to the lake where I used to go as a kid. The water was still, the air sharp with the scent of pine. I sat there on the hood of my car, staring at the horizon, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. Not happiness, not joy, but peace. Melissa had taken my trust, Ethan had taken my loyalty, but neither of them could take away the man I had become through the fire they lit. The betrayal had hardened me, but it hadn't broken me. It had stripped me down to the truth, that I had given too much of myself to people who didn't deserve it. That loyalty, when wasted on the wrong people, turns into chains. And that sometimes the cruelest betrayal is also the greatest gift, because it forces you to see reality clearly. Melissa thought she stole a fortune. She thought she destroyed me. But the truth is, she gave me something far more valuable, freedom. As I sat there by the lake, the sun dipping below the horizon, I made a silent vow. Never again would I let someone like her close enough to cut me. Never again would I hand over my trust so cheaply. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening to my story, it's this: pay attention. Don't ignore the signs. Don't let love blind you to disrespect. Because sometimes the person lying beside you is the same one sharpening the knife. And if you do get betrayed, don't break. Don't crawl. Stand. Because the sweetest revenge isn't screaming, it isn't fighting, it's surviving. Thriving. Living so well that the people who tried to bury you have to choke on the sight of your strength. Melissa is gone now. Ethan is gone too. And me? I'm still here. Stronger. Sharper. Wiser. And for the first time in years, finally free. Freedom didn't come all at once. At first, it felt hollow, like standing in an empty house where every wall still echoed with her voice. The bed was mine again, but it was too big. Meals were quiet. Silence stretched into the corners of my life where arguments used to live. That's the part people don't talk about. Betrayal doesn't just rip your heart out, it rearranges your whole world, and you have to learn how to walk through the ruins without tripping on the pieces. But slowly, I adjusted. The quiet stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like peace. I could breathe without waiting for another lie to hit me in the face. I could sit in my own home without wondering who she was texting, or why she was late, or whether the smile she gave me was real or rehearsed. The calm was strange at first, but then it became addictive. There were still nights where the anger tried to crawl back in. Nights where I pictured Ethan's hands on her waist, or her eyes flashing with cruelty at that settlement, or the way she said, "You're boring, Daniel." I'd lie awake, clenching my fists, replaying everything I should have said, everything I could have done differently. But then I'd remind myself, it wasn't me who failed. It wasn't me who broke promises. It wasn't me who betrayed. That realization became my anchor. I didn't lose a wife. I lost a parasite. I didn't lose a brother. I lost a fraud. And what I gained was clarity, painful, sharp, but honest. Months later, I ran into someone who knew Melissa. She told me Melissa was drifting from city to city, chasing money, chasing attention, never staying long in one place. She said Ethan had disappeared completely, buried under debts and shame. I listened, nodded, and felt nothing. No anger, no joy. Just nothing. They had both become ghosts to me, and ghosts can't hurt you once you stop feeding them. Life moved on. My company thrived, stronger than ever without the distraction of my brother's reckless spending. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with while trying to keep Melissa happy. I started taking care of myself again, working out, eating better, sleeping without nightmares. For the first time in years. My reflection in the mirror didn't look tired, it looked alive. And here's the truth I learned the hard way: betrayal doesn't define you unless you let it. Pain can either harden you into bitterness or sharpen you into wisdom. I chose wisdom. Melissa thought she broke me, but what she really did was burn down a house I should have left long ago. She cleared the path for me to rebuild on stronger ground. If anyone ever finds themselves in my shoes, here's what I'd tell them: don't waste time chasing answers from people who thrive on lies. Don't beg for honesty from mouths that only know manipulation. Don't let their betrayal convince you that you're unworthy. Their choices are their reflection, not yours. And most importantly, don't let revenge be your only fuel. Yes, it's sweet to watch the liar choke on their own downfall, but the real victory is living well, moving forward, and refusing to let their poison dictate your future. Melissa once told me I was boring. That I lived like a middle-class drone while she deserved a king. She was right about one thing: I wasn't her king. I was her mirror, showing her the emptiness inside herself. And she couldn't stand it. Now, when I think of her, I don't feel hate. I feel gratitude. She showed me exactly what I don't want, exactly what I will never accept again. She taught me that love without respect is a cage, and that loyalty given to the wrong person is just another word for self-destruction. I'm not saying the scars are gone. They'll always be there. But scars aren't weaknesses, they're reminders. They remind me that I survived, that I walked through betrayal and came out standing. So if she ever walks back into my life, if she ever tries to claw her way back, she'll find nothing left to take. Because the man she tried to bury doesn't exist anymore. All that's left is me. And that's enough.